What's up, friends? Welcome back to the Shaw Local Bears Insider Podcast. We are back. The Bears are back, and we are back. Michael, we had a little break there. We had a little week off with the bye week. Catch our breaths too. It's hard for us people who have to watch football these days. No, I'm just kidding. It's not hard. But we're back. Welcome to the Shaw Local Bears Insider Podcast. I'm Shaw Local Bears beat reporter Sean Hammond. He is Shaw Local's very own Michael Dwojak. We are joining you on Friday, October 25th, live on YouTube. Michael, how you doing this morning?
Good. I'm glad to be back. It kind of feels kind of like, oh, I forgot we're doing this like weekly and that kind of stuff, and now we're back into it. So it's good to get back into the routine. Obviously, a big game on Sunday, and a lot of stuff to talk about as we preview Bears Commanders.
Yeah, there is a lot to talk about. This is a big one. It feels like a big one. I don't know if anybody really expected it to be quite this big coming into the season. Obviously, you got Caleb Williams, number 1 pick, Jaden Daniels, the number 2 pick for the Commanders. You're always going to have that circled on your calendar when you get the schedule in May. But I don't think anybody expected these teams to be sitting where they are. The Bears are 4-2 coming out of the bye week. The Commanders are 5-2. Both of these teams are exceeding expectations, and especially for two teams that were towards the bottom of the league last year. I mean, the Commanders won 4 games, and they're already sitting there at 5-2. This is a pretty impressive turnaround so far, and we'll talk about it a little bit. But Jaden Daniels is in question. He's got a rib injury. He hasn't practiced yet this week. We're talking Friday morning. We don't have the Friday injury report yet. But if he doesn't practice today, I imagine he's not going to play in this game.
No, and I kind of figure, I thought it was interesting when Dan Quinn said earlier in the week that he's going to be week to week instead of day to day. I feel like it's one of those things where, maybe the Commanders like put him out there just to like go through the walkthrough on Friday, and it ends up being like, oh, he was limited. So it's gamesmanship, right? Like you obviously don't want to tip your hand. So I do think that if I had to put money on it, I don't think Jaden Daniels will play, which I'm sure the execs at CBS are a little disappointed about since they decided to flex this game and, have a battle between the number 1 and number 2 quarterback picks. But it's a big game regardless, right? Like no one really expected the Commanders to be in this position. I think that, Jaden Daniels was expected to be good, but I think the roster, they're kind of going from like a little mini rebuild. So to start off at 5-2, that's really impressive for them. And then for the Bears, obviously at 4-2, being exactly where they want to be. I'm sure, some will say we should have won that Colts game or that kind of stuff. But, at 4-2 heading into like the, I don't think it's technically the second half, but basically the second half after the bye week. This is a really big game for them for what they want to do against the NFC. And Daniels potentially not playing in this game could again be another, benefit for the Bears where they've kind of had some luck throughout the season.
Yeah, they've obviously the schedule has been pretty favorable the last few weeks. They've really only, I'd say the Texans were really the only tough opponent that the Bears have faced so far. And if Daniels doesn't play, that might be a little bit of luck going in their favor. I mean, Marcus Mariota wasn't terrible, but they also were playing the Panthers on Sunday. So like you got to kind of take that with a grain of salt. I think generally, I think he's fine. I think for a backup quarterback, he's good. I didn't think he was like awful when he was the starter in Atlanta a couple seasons ago. He's been fine. I think for the thing that surprises me about the Commanders is 2 things. One, they trade away Montez Sweat. They trade away half their defensive line at the deadline last year, and they're playing at a pretty decent level on that side of the football. Despite, like you said, it's sort of like a mini rebuild here, but this thing's turning around pretty quickly. And then the same thing in the trenches on the other side. I mean, you look at some of the names on this offensive line and nothing really stands out to you, but they've actually played pretty well comparatively to maybe what the expectations were coming into the season. This is a stingy Commanders team. And obviously you like them a lot better when Jaden Daniels is in the game. His deep ball is really impressive. I think just, I was rewatching that Ravens game a couple of weeks ago just to see what he did against a better defense. And I think Jaden has actually done a really good job of just kind of taking what the defense gives him. And yeah, everybody talks about the deep ball, but he's really accurate too. In the shorter areas and over the middle of the field, and just taking what he's like a smart quarterback. He seems to have a high level understanding, much like Caleb Williams does. You see him looking off defenders with his eyes and stuff like that, and that's really impressive for a young quarterback. It's a shame if we're not going to get this matchup, because I think it would be really fun to see them. And yeah, you mentioned it. CBS flex this game. They got Jim Nantz and Tony Romo on the call, and unfortunately, it's looking like Jaden Daniels isn't going to play, and that's going to be a bummer, I think, for everybody who watches football.
Yeah, it definitely will. It would be fun to kind of see, what these two guys are going to do. But I think the injury, it's one of the not. I would, I don't know if that's the right word, but him being the type of quarterback he is and have size that he has, you just kind of see, he's going to be, open to these types of hits and these types of injuries. He's not small by any means, but he's not as big as, Justin Fields or, even Lamar Jackson, who can take some of those hits. So, you saw a lot of great things, but you also saw the risk of having a quarterback like him. And now you have it where you have him playing, with ribs injury. And obviously that's not something you just recover from pretty quickly. So, he's seen a lot of great stuff and he's done great, but it'll be interesting to see, whether this injury at all kind of transfers the way that he wants to play, for the rest of his career, and whether he maybe doesn't take as many shots as he's used to.
Yeah, he's tall, like he's got the height. He's not a short dude. He's not Bryce Young short, but he is, at least he looks Bryce Young skinny to me when you watch him play. I mean, he's not a thick dude. And unfortunately, that's going to lead to situations like this. We saw that Justin Fields has dealt with rib injuries in his career when he was with the Bears, and he's not a small dude. So yeah, that's the risk you take when you play the style of quarterback. But guys do it. Lamar Jackson has played many years now at this point, and he's been able to play at a really high level. He's playing at a really high level right now. And it's certainly possible. You wonder if they want to try to beef Jaden Daniels up a little bit, over the offseason. That's hard to do. You can't really do that in season when you're practicing and you're burning all those calories and you're playing in these games. But yeah, it's just unfortunate that it happened this week, and we might not get that matchup with Jaden and Caleb. Keep an eye on our Twitter pages. We're going to have the injury reports later today on Friday if you're listening with us live. If you're listening after the fact on Spotify or on Apple, also keep an eye out on our Twitter pages, and we'll let you know when we're going to go live. We're trying to go live every Monday and Friday during the football season. We had a little break there for the bye week. We gave ourselves a little break, and I think that's okay. But from here on out, there's no more bye weeks. So we're going to be plugging along, previewing every week, recapping the game every Monday or Tuesday, whatever the case may be. And thank you to everybody who's joining us live. We really do appreciate you joining us. Yeah, this is Michael. How surprised are you where these two teams are at right now with the records and what this game? I mean, this could be another. I don't know. I don't want to. Is it too dramatic to call this like a springboard? Like a whoever wins this game is obviously going to be in really good position moving forward.
I think it's an important game just based on, in a couple different ways where, overall for the team, you have a good position now to pick up a big NFC win when you're trying to make the playoffs here. Mm-hmm. So you have a good opportunity to, play against a team that's, maybe not 100% healthy, maybe, hasn't experienced as many different things, but this is a good opportunity to pick up a road win, go on the road and get an NFC win that will really help you later on in the season. So in that aspect, I feel like we've been throwing around must-win games a lot for, early in the season. But, we keep talking about that second half of the schedule and it doesn't get easier. And, and not to say that this matchup is any easier, but I do think that you're going up a level in competition now compared to what you kind of seen earlier in the season. And that goes back to Caleb Williams in the offense as well, where, you kind of seen them, take advantage against, some poorer defenses, with the Jaguars, the Panthers, even the Rams a little bit.
Mhm.
And now you're starting to see a good opportunity where the Commanders are like a mid-tier defense. They've given up some, they've given up some passing yards, they've given up some rushing yards, but they also, they've also made some stops here and there. So I think this is going to be a good test for the Bears offense where they can kind of see where they're at this point and kind of take that next step against another, a higher tier defense.
Yeah, after 2 weeks, the Commanders statistically the Commanders defense was not looking so hot. They
Right.
gave up 37 in week 1 to the Bucks. They barely squeaked by the Giants, and they gave up 33 against the Bengals. Those were their first 3 games. And since then, they've kind of found their footing a little bit. Rick in the comments here says the Commanders have not played any great teams, and yeah, that's a good point. I mean, with the exception of the Ravens, I don't think that they've really played any good teams. They lost to the Ravens 30-23. That was in week six when the Bears played in London. Yeah, like they haven't been tested. I don't think they've faced a defense as good as the Bears defense. And that's going to be the real test, especially if you got your backup quarterback in Marcus Mariota coming in. And you know what? That can kind of segue us right into our preview segments here. But first, I do want to touch on the latest injuries on the Bears side. I know we've been talking about Jaden Daniels a bunch, but Jaquan Brisker and Kyler Gordon have not practiced this week. That's the notable one. Tyreek Stevenson is back in practice. He had a calf injury during the London week that happened in practice, and he missed that game. He's back. But Jaquan Brisker, who suffered that concussion against the Panthers, which feels like ages ago, and Kyler Gordon, who had a hamstring injury in London, those guys have not practiced. They're probably not. They're probably trending in the wrong direction at this point, unless either of them gets back on Friday. Terrell Smith has been practicing, so that would be a big addition in that secondary if he's good to go. He's been out with a hip injury for several weeks. He'll probably be in that starting lineup with some of those guys out. Well, I'm thinking about that now. Josh Blackwell is probably going to be your nickel, but Terrell Smith is going to be available, and that's going to give you some more depth. Other than that, like there's not a whole lot of Bears injury news going on. Larry Borum and Travis Homer are back at practice. They're still on IR, but they're in their practice window. Scott Daly, the long snapper, has been back this week, which is good. It's looking like they're not going to need Cole Kmet to snap the football.
Yeah, that was kind of funny. Just with getting him getting special teams player of the week after the Jaguars game and that sort of stuff. But and I know he said they kind of felt guilty about it when he met with you guys earlier this week, just with getting the honor where a bunch of long snappers who are mad. But the injury front is interesting, right? Because this Jaquan Brisker thing, this is his third concussion, and that's something that you just don't want to play around with. And I know that the concussion protocol is not to simplify it and be like it's a pretty easy process to get through. Obviously, it's complicated, and you want to put the player's health at all, at the best place. But, I do wonder whether that's, a thing where it's like, he clears concussion protocol and he's able to play on Sunday, whether he clears it today, whether he clears it tomorrow. That'll be an interesting thing. For the injuries that you did mention, I feel like it kind of goes back to what the Commanders' plan is, right? Where it's like, this is an important game, but this is also like week 8 in the season, right?
Yeah.
Like this isn't like you're going to miss or make the playoffs if you win or lose this game. So I think from the Bears standpoint, if you're looking at the secondary, maybe you don't push Brisker. Well, you definitely don't push Brisker back from a head injury. Like you obviously want to let that play out the way it needs to. But, when it comes to Kyler Gordon or whether it comes to Stevenson, I think you have enough depth in the secondary where you're kind of like, it would be great if we had them, but I'm not worried about them not playing right in this matchup, especially with Marcus Mariota likely playing. I think that you're kind of in a good spot where it's like, all right, give them a week. Hopefully they can come back against the Cardinals, and then you got the Patriots after that. So, I think the competition goes up in this next 3-week stretch, but at the same time, you're kind of like, well, I'm not going to push my guys back at this point. If they need a week back here or there, maybe we give it to them, because I think that the depth that you do have in the secondary, like you mentioned with Smith and Hicks and all those type of guys, I think you feel pretty good, especially at the secondary spot, than you would in any other different position group.
Yeah, those guys played well in London. Elijah Hicks played well. Josh Blackwell had an interception. Both those guys were Hicks had a fumble recovery, so they were in on turnovers. I think you're pretty confident in that group. Even when you got some backups in there, and I think that's a really good point. The record too, you're sitting here at 4-2. You're not as desperate as if it was, say, the other way around. If you're 2-4, you might be trying to push guys back a little bit quicker. Yeah, I don't expect we'll see Brisker this week. I forget exactly I think when you're in the concussion protocol, you have to practice a certain number of times before you come back. I don't have that in front of me, so don't quote me on that. But I'm pretty sure it's looking like he's not going to play this week. And yeah, I don't think you necessarily need to rush Kyler back. There was a question in here: can Stevenson play the nickel? I don't recall seeing Stevenson play the nickel at all in training camp. I could be wrong about that. I would expect that's going to be Blackwell again. I'm just trying to think through this here. That is what I would expect. I don't know if Terrell Smith has both Stevenson and Smith have been outside corners pretty much since they got here. I don't know if either of them is going to play Kyler Gordon's spot at the nickel. I would expect that they kind of specialize those guys. Blackwell, I mean, that has been Blackwell's job is to be a nickel. When of course he's a special teams guy, and that's probably his first job. But he's trained to be that nickel corner. I think we're probably going to see him if Kyler Gordon doesn't play.
And I feel like, just to kind of go off of that Gordon injury kind of stunk, right? Because it was like he was having such a great game against the Jaguars.
He was having a great game.
He's been on a tear right now these last few games. So that injury kind of does stink, just based on, even his sacking ability, right? Like, you've seen Eberflus send them a lot on the blitz. So that'll be really interesting to see just how they kind of, change that up and how they try to replace that, whether they get the, Sweat more involved, Walker, Taylor. It'll be really interesting to see how they're able to dial up pressure against Mariota.
All right, Michael, let's dive into some of our preview segments here. What's your game within the game? What position battles, what one-on-one matchups? What are you watching in this Bears Commanders game?
I'm interested to see, kind of going off of what I just talked about, how much are they able to kind of pressure Marcus Mariota and into making mistakes, right? Because I think we've talked about, Marcus Mariota. He's a good backup. He's serviceable. He'll do some good things, and he'll complete passes. He looked pretty good against the Panthers, but his MO has been he throws too many interceptions, right? Like he turns the ball over way too much. So I'm really interested to see. You can go the secondary versus Marcus Mariota. I'm going to go with the defensive line, primarily. The edge rushers, Montez Sweat and Taylor and Walker. How much pressure are they able to get to him, and how much are they able to kind of make him, maybe rush his decisions and that sort of stuff. So I think that'll be really interesting to see, because, both are, dual threat quarterbacks, Daniels and Mariota. Both have, and obviously Mariota has much more experience than Daniels does. But I do think that early on in his career, you've seen Daniels not really, fall into mistakes or feel, pressure to make mistakes, where Mariota's been known to do that. So I'm really interested to see, how much the Bears' pressure off the edge is going to be able to cause him to make some of those mistakes.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. This is a homecoming game for both Montez Sweat and for Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams grew up in the Washington, D.C. area. Obviously, Montez was playing with the Commanders for the early part of his career. Now he downplayed that, of course. Like these guys always kind of downplay that when they go play their old team, but I think that does matter. The last time we were just in Washington last year, and we were watching Montez Sweat on the other side. That was before the trade deadline, before the Bears picked him up. I'm for my game within the game, I'm gonna flip to the other side, and I'm going with the Bears tackles here, and this is again, like I mentioned it earlier, you look at the Commanders defense, you look at some of the names who's leading them in sacks, and you're not like these are like journeyman guys who are on their second and third team. You're talking about Dante Fowler, Dorrance Armstrong Jr., guys who aren't like, you don't look at that and say, "Ooh, we're really scared by that." But at the same time, they have a really good sack rate, and I know that they're buoyed by I think they had 7 against Deshaun Watson, and that's going to make that number look really good. But they're 6th in the NFL right now in sack percentage, and the Bears tackles haven't really been tested since week 2, I feel like. And that's, that's maybe not fair to say. Obviously every week is a test, but they haven't been really tested since those 2 really good edge rushers in Houston. And I think that at some point they're going to get tested again. And I think, Dan Quinn's defenses are always good. They always play above expectation. And I would say that this defense so far has played above expectation. It's not one guy that scares you, but I do want to see, how that offensive line, and particularly those tackles, how they handle some of the pressure that the Commanders are going to bring, because that these teams are going to try the best way to bother a rookie quarterback is to get pressure. And nobody's done it the last couple of weeks. And I think the Commanders are going to make a concerted effort to try to do that.
And Sean, going off of that, I know obviously you guys had a story about the Nate Davis trade market and that sort of stuff. Just what do you feel like the Bears, are sticking with what they've been doing recently, or do you feel like someone coming in, Larry Borum, or eventually Bates will come back in? Do you feel like that this is the offensive line that they're going to go with, or is this are they playing with what they have, and once guys come back, they might shift things up a little bit?
Yeah, it sounds like they're going to stick with the same 5 this week. Now, the only question is, when does Ryan Bates come back? That might change things. He is not back in practice yet. He's still on IR. I mean, if he comes back to practice, say next week or the week after that, that's when you could start thinking about changing something up. And that probably just means, throwing Ryan Bates at right guard and moving Matt Pryor out of the lineup. I don't think it's anything too dramatic. I don't think they would change Coleman Shelton at this point. I think he's had that center job for long enough that you don't really want to mess with that. That's just kind of my opinion of it. Matt Pryor could be a really versatile backup as well, because we've seen he can play the tackle spots, he can play the guard spots. If he's your jack of all trades, 6th man off the bench, I think you'd like that. And it's just going to kind of depend on when Ryan Bates comes back. Yeah, I saw the Nate Davis trade stuff. Ian Rappaport had a story on NFL.com, and that was kind of a note towards the bottom. I don't know who's trading for this guy. I mean, you got to be pretty desperate in those interior spots. You're not going to trade for him to start, obviously, at this point. Yeah. He's not starting for the Bears. I don't see why you would trade for him to start. Maybe if you're looking for depth, but I don't. Is he that much better than a guy you could get off waivers or a guy you could get off the street? I don't really know.
Do you get the impression that they want to get rid of him? Would they just trade for a conditional 6th pick, or maybe even a 7th? Is this just more of a he just doesn't fit the room, or do you not really touch that because you don't really want to be trading away linemen given, how quickly they can get injured?
I do think they're tired of it. They're tired of his whole situation and everything they've dealt with over the last year and a half. I do think they probably want to move on. I think they'll probably cut him in the offseason. I'd be surprised if they didn't. But they're not going to cut him mid-season because somebody might throw a 7th round pick at you or something. I think they would take anything because clearly they don't want to play him. I mean, they got Bill Murray over him on the depth chart at this point. We've seen Bill Murray come in before him when there's been injuries on that line. I don't think that they're in a hurry to play him. Obviously, you're going to keep him on the roster because injuries happen and you could be forced to at some point put him in the game, but I don't think they want to.
Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to see just what it very clearly just doesn't work anymore, right? And it's unfortunate, obviously, Ryan Poles took a chance on him and, gave him the money and it just didn't transfer over. But it'll be interesting to see how this line plays. Going back to your original point, just against, I feel like they've protected Caleb pretty well over the past couple weeks. And I think you're starting to see Caleb's clock go a little bit quicker too. I think he's getting rid of the ball. There's still some times where you're kind of like, Caleb, you got to throw the ball away. Like, why are you holding onto the ball? Or, you're trying to make a play out of nothing. And I think he's going to continue to learn from that. But I do agree that they've done a pretty good job of protecting him so far, and it'll be interesting to see how they do that against, like you started off. I wouldn't say that this is the top tier of, pass rush by any means, but they have created some pressure against, some guys this year.
Yeah, certainly. It's certainly they're playing above expectation. I really think that, and it'll be an interesting test. Is it going to be the toughest test all season? Probably not, but it's going to be an interesting test for that O-line. All across the board. I know I highlighted the tackles, but you could say the interior as well. All right, our most valuable Bear. Here's our update in our best of 17 series here throughout the season. I had Caleb Williams last week. I picked first. Caleb had a great game. You had Rome Odunze. So I picked up the W. I'm at 4 wins. You're at 2 through 6 weeks here. But you get to pick first this week. So, Michael, who is your most valuable Bear this week against the Commanders?
I'm really tempted to go with the cheap code, right? And you just go with Caleb Williams. And I know I only have 2 more picks left for the season, so I got to use them wisely. But I think I'm going to go with the homecoming. I think I'm going to go with Montez Sweat. I think he's been developing throughout the year, and I wouldn't say that the low numbers are like that. He's having a bad season. Obviously, he's facing double teams, if not triple teams, sometimes when he's rushing the ball. So that's obviously opened things up. But I've really liked what I've seen from Javon Dexter and Andrew Billings up the middle. They did a great job against Jaguars too. And that's really opened some things up for Montez, I think. I think that you've seen a lot of offensive lines be like, oh, we can't just leave the middle open. Or we can't let it go, or we can't even let the opposite side open. Mm-hmm. So I think that this defensive line, when we did our midseason grades, I think that I actually gave them the highest grade, which is kind of funny given all the questions we had about them heading into the season. But they've played great, and I think, Montez isn't going to say much, when he meets with the media, and he's not really, going to put out anything that's like bulletin board material. But I'm sure that this is probably a big game for him going back where he started his career, the team that traded him away and didn't think that he was worthy of, a contract extension and, keeping him to be part of the franchise moving forward. So there's probably there's going to be some, there's going to be some I wanted to prove you wrong. And I think he has a big game because of that.
I like that. He was on my short list here. And like you said, we do have a limit. If this is your first time listening to us, we have a limit. You can only pick Caleb 3 times. We decided. So we have each used our Caleb choice once. So Michael goes with Montez Sweat. I see in the comments, CJ likes DeAndre Swift. If there's anybody else who's got a most valuable Bear pick for this week, throw it in the comments. We'll throw you up there. Rick says Dexter because of all the attention on Montez. Yeah, that's fair. Dexter's played really well through the early part of the season here. I am tempted to go with Caleb, but I'm gonna pivot too. Neither of us are gonna take Caleb in this game. I'm going with DJ Moore, who last time he played the Commanders had 230 yards and 3 touchdowns. And I know it's a different coaching staff. I know there's different guys on that defense. But when DJ was asked about it this week, he was asked, do you ever think about that game? And he said, yeah, I think about that game. Of course, I think about that game when he had 230 yards. It's kind of a homecoming for him, too. He went to Maryland, not too far. So there's a lot of homecomings to go around for this Bears team. I think DJ has another big game. He was a little bit quiet in that game against the Jaguars. And look, this offense has a lot of weapons. Cole Kmet and Keenan Allen had big games. Each had 2 touchdowns against Jacksonville. And, for DJ, it was a little bit quieter day. But I really feel like it's going to be the ebb and flow of the season. Like, if those guys are having a big game, DJ might have an off week. I think DJ is going to come back this week and play really, really well. I think he's going to have another big game. I don't know if he's going to go for 230 yards, but I think he's going to have a big game.
I think also he was also on my short list if I wasn't going to choose Caleb. I think it's also interesting. I know that the coaching staffs are different and that kind of stuff, but this Bears, for some reason, the Bears do well in Washington, right? Like you obviously remember I think Mitch Trubisky had a good game there. Obviously, Justin Fields and DJ Moore had a really good game there last year. So I don't know what it is about that stadium, but the Bears seem to do pretty well there pretty recently. So I I don't know how much that really matters in a factor like this with the whole new offense. But that I was kind of thinking, Caleb or DJ could have a pretty good game in Washington, and I wouldn't really be surprised just based on, it's kind of like what we talked about where you watched, and I'm not comparing the Bears offense to the Ravens offense by any means, but you've seen this Commanders defense play against, relatively good offenses. They don't do a great job. They've given up a good chunk of points. They gave up 33 points to the Bengals when they were kind of struggling there at the beginning of the season. And they gave up, I think it was 37, if not more, points to the Buccaneers to start the year. So listen, the opportunities are going to be there against this defense. They've shown some good things on the defensive line, but there's still a lot of vulnerabilities. And I think it'll be interesting to see whether Caleb, DJ, Rome, Keenan Allen, I saw you wrote a story, Sean, about that.
Yeah.
Whether they're able to take opportunities there.
This is one of those stats that goes over a decade and doesn't really mean anything. But yeah, the last 3 times that the Bears have played at Washington, they've scored 40 points in each one of those games. And that goes back to 2013. That was last season, of course, with DJ's big game. You mentioned the game in 2019. I'm sorry, they've scored at least 30 points. The game in 2019 when Mitch Trubisky played really well, they scored 31. And back in 2013, in a loss, they lost 45 to 41. They've scored points in that stadium and against the Commanders. Sports Chicago style likes Kevin Byard as his most valuable Bear. I like that. I mean, if you're gonna go like hunting for interceptions, I like Byard. I like that pick. I picked him. I think it was the Colts game early in the season. One of those games I picked him. It didn't work out, or actually maybe that was a rough week for both of us. I think we had really
that wasn't a great game. We don't talk about that one.
We don't talk about that one. Okay, Michael. What is your surprise prediction for this week? What's something that you think is going to happen that we're not talking about, we're not thinking about, that is not even on our radar?
I don't know how much of a surprise this one is, just based on how hot they've been to start the year. But I think this defense ends up with 3 interceptions. I think 3 might be a high number, obviously, but I'll make, like, if I say 1 or 2, I don't know how surprised you would be, right? So I'll go with 3 just to add the number. But
go big or go home.
I think that this defense, even against Trevor Lawrence a couple weeks ago, I think it was it was Smith, right, who had the interception, like his first interception of his career. There was either the Jaguars or the Rams. I forget which game it was, but you've seen that even the guys, the Johnsons, the Stevensons, the Briskers, like other guys have stepped up and created turnovers as well. So I think that, Marcus Mariota, I think he did a good job against the Panthers. I think everyone does a good job. I was shocked to see that the Panthers have a win. I forgot about that game, but Panthers are not good. And I think that this defense is going to keep on going, even if they're a little bit depleted. And they get 3 picks in this game. So that's my surprise.
We do have an update here as we're recording live. John Keim, the Commanders beat reporter at ESPN, says that Jaden Daniels is not out there practicing. This is at 10:30 Chicago time on Friday. So yeah, I mean, he's not going to play this week. That's going to be Marcus Mariota. And hey, if that's Marcus Mariota, I like that prediction, Michael. That's get him uncomfortable. You can force him to turn the ball over, to throw some interceptions. I like this thought. I think that this is this Commanders offense has looked really good when Jaden Daniels was the quarterback. And I don't put a whole lot of stock into what Mariota did last week against the Panthers. That Panthers team is trash.
I don't think you can, right? Like, and you have a whole, however long he's in the NFL now, 5 or 6 years. You've seen what Marcus Mariota is in this league, right? He'll make you some plays. He can run the ball a little bit, but he turns the ball over and he throws interceptions. He's a backup quarterback at this point in his career. And I think that he hasn't seen a defense like the Bears so far, even if it is depleted. And I think they're going to go hunting for interceptions in this game.
Rick says that Mariota is 2-0 against the Bears all time. And yeah, it looks like
Rick, that goes against
the case.
Said, but okay.
I'm not too worried about that. Yeah. I mean, I'd have to look up when those games were. I don't know that off the top of my head, but so what? I'm fine with that. That's okay. Yeah. He can have those 2 wins. That's cool. My surprise prediction, I've been holding this one in my back pocket for a little bit, deciding when to break it out. And I think I'm going to break it out now. I think Matt Eberflus wins a challenge this week. I know we've given him a lot of crap this year, especially those first couple of games where that Houston game, some of his decisions to challenge or not to challenge have been a little iffy here and there. Look, everything regresses to the mean. At some point, he's gonna win a challenge, and I think maybe it's this week. A primetime game. You got Tony Romo on the call. I think some situation is going to arise. Maybe it's one of those interceptions, Michael. We'll pair it with yours. Maybe there's a close call if it's a catch or not or something like that. I think Flus wins a challenge.
That, right? Yeah.
What's that?
We saw that, where they had a fumble, whatever. So, it could happen.
Yeah, it could happen. At some point, something's gonna break his way because it's been a little tough on some of those calls. Rick followed up the Atlanta win. Yeah, what was that? 2022. Mariota and the Falcons beat the Bears. That was a game Justin Fields got hurt in, and then once with the Titans way back when. Well, those are the two games that Mariota beat the Bears. I got a Flus victory on a challenge, which we'll see.
This feels like an important win for Flus, doesn't it? Like, this feels like an important game where it's like, I don't know if you would you say that he's at his seat is warm? Like, what would you say he is at this point where, obviously heading into the season, we were like, you need to win 9 games, probably 10 games, somewhere like that. But, is this a really important game for him just to show that he can win on the road in important games like this? Because eventually you're just getting to a point where it's like, you got to win these types of games and make the playoffs eventually, or you might have a difficult conversation at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think you got to win a road game. I think you got to win a road game against a backup quarterback when you're coming off your bye.
Right.
You do. Now, are you on the hot seat if you lose? No, I don't think so. The hot seat conversation could come into play with the way the schedule looks the second half of the year. That's when I think it's going to get interesting. I don't think there's any real concerns about that right now. But yeah, I mean, this is a game that you want to win. You should be well rested. You should be well prepared. And like we said before, Mariota shouldn't scare you. And I think that this is a very winnable road game. It's there for the taking. So, a good team is going to go and take it.
Yeah, definitely. So I think this is a big proving moment for a lot. This is basically, all right, that's dramatic. I'm not going to be like, basically, if you win this game, you make the playoffs, you're a good team or anything like that. But I do think that this tells you a lot about what you guys are. And I know that the NFL is a week-to-week league. And, sometimes you just have an off game, right? Like that is why everyone gets so hooked to the NFL, is because anyone can win any game every single week. But this is an important game for the Bears. Just if, Ryan Poles at the beginning of the season was like, we need a win, right? Like, this is the stage just said you need to win games. And this is those types of games that he talked about. The Colts was those types of games. You've seen them do well. They went 3-0 in those games that they needed to heading into the bye. Now you kind of got to continue that, especially with Daniels not playing. So, I think it'll be really interesting to see. And you want to see Eberflus whether – and I think he's done pretty well coming out of the bye, right? Like, I think they are undefeated or they've done pretty well. But it'll be really interesting to see how they kind of look coming out, especially with that first drive offense, whether, they go with scripts, no scripts, and that sort of stuff, because that's obviously been the last step, or one of the few last steps that they want to address heading into the second half here.
Yeah, I'd have to, let's see. Going back, they beat the Lions last year following the bye. And then what was his first year, Flus? They lost to the Eagles. They played really well in that game. That was in December. But it was a close loss against that Eagles team that eventually played in the Super Bowl. This is a game that's there for the taking. And I do think the Bears are going to win this game. Just to dive into our picks here, I'll go first. I got the Bears winning 27-23. I think it will be okay. I picked that score not knowing who the quarterback was. I might lower that a little bit. I might say 27-20. Now that we know for certain that this is going to be Marcus Mariota, I do think this is a game that the Bears are going to win. I think it's a game that they should win, especially without Jaden Daniels. I think that they're going to play well coming out of the bye. I think this is a well-rested team. This is a veteran team at this point, and I think that they're going to play well in this game and get the win.
And I think you got a lot of motivated guys, right? I think there's a lot to prove. I think a lot of guys, Caleb Williams, like we said, homecoming for him. He wants to do well for his home crowd. Montez Sweat, DJ Moore. There's a lot of, and there's some motivation to it. Where like Cole Kmet talked about that he liked that this game was like flexed to the late afternoon window. Right, like they're tired of playing in noon. They
know everyone's watching.
Yeah, they want to have the national audience, right? So I think that there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of motivation to win this game for a lot of different reasons. So I think I'm going to have the Bears winning this game. Let's do 24-14. I think it's a 10-point game. I think you get a late interception just to kind of seal things up, or one of those 3 interceptions. I know 10 points seems like an extreme. I think that Marcus Mariota is prone to make mistakes. And I think that this is a defense, even though it is missing a lot of key members from its secondary, is very big on capitalizing on those mistakes. So I think that kind of opens the game up. And I think you see progress again from Caleb and the offense, and they're riding high heading into Arizona next week.
CJ thinks the Bears are going to struggle coming off the bye. They're going to win 19-17. Defense carries them to a dub. I think you can say that every game. I mean, this defense has that potential. And I agree that that's possible every game. Rick has 31-17. Bears win. Anybody else, throw your scores in the chat. We'll throw them up on the screen. Thank you guys for joining us live. This is fun. We enjoy chatting with you guys every Monday and Friday during the football season. Keep an eye on our Twitter pages. We will let you know when we're going to go live. We're typically trying to do 10 a.m. Mondays and Fridays. The schedule could change a little bit here and there with, depending on travel and stuff after games on Monday. And of course, whenever they play on say a Thursday or a Monday night. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, leave us a review and please keep an eye out. You can always come join us live. If you're listening on YouTube, hit the thumbs up. That's a great way to support the show. Head to shawlocal.com. Read our work there. We got lots of Bears stuff up. Please consider subscribing. That is the number one best way to support our show. He's Michael Dwojak. You can find him on Twitter at mdwojak94. I'm Sean Hammond. You can find me on Twitter at Sean_Hammond. This has been the Shaw Local Bears Insider Podcast. Thank you guys for listening. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the game. And hopefully we can get another Bears victory for all the Bears fans out there.